I do as well. And we have a number of people in Sweden like Tony Irving that we know very well, and he's a professional dancer. But I think one of my favorite videos of all is this Finnish video called Finsk Disco.
I know that pretty well.
You do?
Yeah.
How is that?
Oh, actually, the guy, Åke Blomqvist, on that video was actually teaching me how to dance. So I don't know if I know how to dance, really. But you should absolutely watch that video.
But you should. So anyone can just Google for Finsk disco, and they will find this very famous, like 20 years ago, or how old is this video, you think? Or?
Yeah, it has to be older than that, Check out the style.
How would
30. Yeah.
How would you describe that video? What is it trying to do there?
Yeah, it's like he is trying to kind of do disco dancing with like Travolta style, but with kind of more discreetly, like the Finns do. So not too much expression or movement.
Goran, do you think you can find the video or? Yeah, it would be. I think it's an awesome thing to do on pre-parties or whatnot to show this, and everyone gets in the mood. But you actually were having lessons with this person?
Yes, we have in school. We have this tradition to have like dancing lessons and a dancing show when we were in high school. And Åke Blomqvist was our teacher for the dance. So, so I'm sure you won't pick me up on the dance floor.
Finnish disco.
Yeah.
Well, and the definition of Finnish disco is like not too elaborate, right?
Yeah, so like Finns are quite kind of it's straight to the point, not too much hustle. So.
But what did you actually learn, or what was your type of dance that you studied?
I've been dancing the jazz ballet and then some disco dance. Of course, yes. With Åke and with a woman called Aira Samulin as well when I was little. Yeah.
And she's rather famous.
She's really famous. Yeah. I think she's closer to 90 or 100 years old, and she looks awesome. Really? And she still dances with this long red hair, and fantastic person. Yeah. A little bit more movement than Åke.
Still at 90 years old?
Yes, absolutely. She's very vibrant.
Cool.
Yeah, but Petronella, who are you?
Yeah, I'm a happy 46 year. I was just kind of messing up today. Also, I'm a 46 or 47, but I decided to be 46 today. A happy 46-year-old data nerd with a background in the fashion industry. A little bit of a impulsive personality who likes to build stuff and start new crazy adventures where there is something very kind of deep kind of culture and values and also some fantastic idea and passion behind the idea. So a little bit of a start-upper, you might say.
And now you are the managing director of Solita Sweden AB and has been part of the journey of building up Solita in Sweden. But let's not start there. I want to start. What was the diesel years all about?
Yeah, that was actually really kind of, you do a lot of stuff during your kind of career and working life, and this was actually my starting point of my real career. I have always been very kind of fascinated about fashion and passionate about kind of clothes and so on. And I started in the fashion industry, and then I got recruited to an important company who imported different kinds of brands like O'Neill, and then they had this very strange brand called Diesel with jeans that didn't come from US. And we have all kinds of different things that we imported. And then the diesel jeans, we started to believe in them more and more and dumped all the other brands. And there started this fantastic journey with diesel when it actually became larger than Levi's in Finland. And as we know, in Sweden, it has been huge as well and globally. So
I remember when my Levi's was not cool anymore and I had to go out and persuade my mom, we need diesel, Mom.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was a funny story because the whole company had such passion and such kind of innovation capacity and such kind of a culture. We were like a family, even though we were placed in different countries, and it was such an international and crazy atmosphere. So it just also kind of gave me the platform of where I want to be, what kind of environment I want to work in. So really, really fantastic.
So what was that culture all about? A family, you have said before, very innovative, marketing, really high. Could you elaborate on
this?
But
it's a little bit kind of sticking out in a positive and good way. It's just kind of making a little bit of waves, being somebody who shocks the market, does things in a different way. And that's something that I really like, just to not only to fit in, but to create a new market, to create a new way of thinking and introducing something that is so awesome. Yeah, and even the Levi's people changed.
Because I can remember, were we talking the 90s?
Yeah, it's in the 90s. I was there from, I think, 93 until 99.
Because I remember even the marketing and the whole feeling of the brand was quite different. So obviously the people behind that, how to make that happen in Finland and Sweden, quite special, must have been quite cool times.
Yeah, it was really, and also the kind of we were all a little bit crazy in that sense that we believed in something. I remember my first day at job. Then we didn't have mobile phones and we didn't have any kind of a mega internet that was actually working and so on. So what I did on my first day, I got a list of all the jeans shops in Finland, and I got a Finnish map of Finland. And then I started calling. Hello, this is Petronella from Diesel. I would like to come by and show you some jeans. Oh, poor girl, you have called wrong. This is a clothing store, not a gas station. And that was the answer, but that's how it started. And I got some meetings booked, and then they put me and a car in a train up to the north of Finland. And then I started driving down and meeting all these jeans stores.
But I think you actually managed to hit it rather big in US as well. I can still remember one day I went down Manhattan at some point in New York, and someone came up to me and said, you must be really rich. You have Diesel jeans on you. If you go with Levi's, it's like nothing there. And Diesel was really, I think hot at that time.
Yeah, it was. And it was also kind of a very high-end brand because it was, of course...
it's Italian, right? Is
Italian, yeah.
Milano-based? Or?
No, it's close to Venice.
Venice.
Like all of the kind of clothing industries gathered there. And in a little town of Molvena where Renzo Rosso, a genius, who started the whole thing and gathered a bunch of fantastic profiles around him. And that was just kind of really thinking out of the box and doing something awesome with something that has been on the market for a long time.
Yeah. And now to move on a little bit, another cool thing we should talk about is that, of course, from the fashion industry and this making a transition, how do you move in? How is your journey to the data space where you are today? So let's talk about that a little bit.
I worked, as said, at Diesel for quite a long time, and we hit kind of the top marks and so on, and it was kind of an awesome place to be. After a while, so I started to kind of wanted to develop myself as well and see maybe some other industries, not only fashion industry, because I was young and I didn't want to make the decision that fashion is my life forever. So I need to see something else. And Finland being a small market, so consultancy company felt like a good option because then you get to work in different. You don't have to commit
to the industry, right? Yes.
Yeah, exactly. But you can try, kind of. And I got recruited to one of the big fours in CRM, customer relationship management, because they thought that the kind of a way of thinking that I had learned from Diesel. With understanding the customer and generating win-win and value and so on, so was
the future.
Yeah, the future, and they had this CRM strategies and processes, kind of a change management.
But still one of the big fours, American consultant.
Yeah, and it was very different. Let's say like this crazy family with no hierarchies and everybody kind of doing this together and so on into the very kind of other kind of environment. So it was also a kind of, but it was exciting as well to see how a company can be run also and be successful. And of course, there I also saw the kind of the structures of how to build strategies, how to build successful companies, how to get processes working, and what is the change all about, like in a more systematic way. So I got this awesome toolkit with me.
A great toolkit and also a crash course.
Definitely.
In this way.
Yeah.
And then from CRM, I guess the state of CRM now, and then moving into the data space.
Yeah, because CRM was, it was in that point that there was a big hype of implementing CRM systems and working with customer data in some way. And usually you categorize the customers like A, B, C, like the best customers and not so interesting ones. And it was very much kind of out from the corporate perspective.
An inside-out perspective.
Yeah, exactly. And cost efficiency more than creating win-win situations for the customer and the company. And I got really interested about data mining algorithms and started to read about them. And I also, actually, I didn't even have time to graduate from business school of Helsinki yet. So I was studying a mathematical subject that's called management science, where we try to model the world with math and do optimization models and so on. And then I had combination of marketing, which was totally crazy at that time. So there I got kind of my eyes on the data and how to utilize and how to learn more of stuff that we don't figure out with our heads, that we can actually kind of have algorithms that find more information and do not have that kind of maybe the bias in them to find these kind of win-win situations.
And from here now, I think then it's what's Intensia?
Yes, yeah, the Swedish ERP.
Yeah, so then from CRM and consulting to the vendor space, if you like.
Yeah, because then I got headhunted there, and they had just launched a data warehouse product, very first one. I can't even remember. It was based on the SQL Server version, whatever. I don't know. It was very old, and it was like a pioneer job to get that thing working, but still it was the first data warehouse. They wanted to build a business around the data warehousing and BI, and I got the job to build that business in Finland in there.
And just to have some technical parts of this as well, data warehouse is a term that's used by many people, and there are other terms like data lakes, and you can have different type of databases, whatever kind. What is your preferred definition of like data warehouse?
Yeah, I think at this point, data warehouse was in the beginning. It was somewhere where you, from the operational systems that are really kind of designed for processing transactions and being efficient in that way, but not very good in summarizing the data and giving you kind of KPIs and analysis and so on. So what we did was to gather that data into a data warehouse in order to restructure that for more analytical purposes, so that you can have reports and dashboards and that kind of stuff. Nowadays, I think data warehouse serves purpose in the bigger kind of a data platform context. Mm-hmm. It can be one part of a larger data platform where you have different kinds, because you have so many different kinds of users and use cases for data nowadays. So it's not only the reporting.
What do you think about the data lake concept? Do you have any feelings or thoughts about that?
Yeah, well, I have no kind of a huge love or hate relationship toward data lakes. It depends how you build it. I think the most important thing we work a lot with and almost only with the cloud-based data platforms, and data lake is somewhere like the one part of the solution, but it's you need to govern the data, because data is not kind of structured in the same way, and you can also, of course, build a data lake that is total mess if you don't have kind of the supporting governance and the structures and data catalogs and this and that. So you have to have an idea, but it's one part of a data platform, and it can serve a purpose for some use cases, but maybe you need a data warehouse to complement that for modeling purposes and so on.
So it's not like they're replacing each other, it's like two complements rather than...
Yes. Because you have a lot of different... Then there is the kind of the emerging concept of data mesh, that is actually, and that's really interesting because it's more of a kind of a trading data between maybe business units or functions, or maybe kind of even externally.
If we try to just clarify for people, what the differences are. Some people say data lakes is basically the raw data. You just pour in the lake, so to speak, and then you can put some structure on it and get some kind of warehouse, perhaps from more operational databases that you have, and then the data mesh. How would you describe the differences?
Yeah, you can. It depends. It depends on the company and the needs as well. But of course, the data lake is usually kind of described exactly like you say, that it's a little bit more unstructured data that you take in. But there, as said, you can't be totally unstructured because then you can't find the data. And sometimes you don't need the data warehouse, so you can actually enter the data lake and fetch whatever you want to, and data can be also kind of pushed into processes directly and so on, and data warehouse can be both kind of the analytical purposes or kind of a structuring and doing some other stuff in there.
But I think we can come back to that because I think moving now into where you are now, Solita. And a little bit you highlight what Solita is or which company this is. I think a very interesting conversation to have today is, of course, you are experiencing and meeting a lot of different types of customers who are trying to go on a data journey. And I think that will be very interesting to understand what are you meeting, or what are we meeting now in the enterprise? What is the enterprise understanding of these different concepts? Coming maybe from different application-centric views on a warehouse is something else than the other things, and now we're talking about different pieces of a bigger puzzle as a platform. So let's go back to that, but moving into that first, I think framing Solita, because Intensia, and then I guess you got an opportunity with Solita.
Yeah, there was a couple of steps
in
between because Solita, I started at Solita 3 years ago, and I already moved to Stockholm like 15 years ago. So
so there is a couple of steps.
There is a couple of steps there in between. But Solita was totally unknown company for me when they called me. And it was really a nice story. There was this recruitment ninja, Kati Kitty, who called me and said, "Hi, I'm from Solita. How are you doing?" And I was like, "What is Solita? And who are you? What's that name?" And we started talking, and I met this fantastic Finnish company that was really kind of not professional in kind of making noise about themselves. Some kind of a hybrid between a developer community meeting a huge amount of data, professionals, and kind of a gaming company meeting consultancy hybrid that I have never seen in Sweden before that day, and it was awesome. We had plenty of discussions. I was absolutely not going to change my job and so on. But
where were you then when you got the call?
At that point of time, I was at the software company. I had been in the consultancies in between, and a software company where I was actually a CMO for the Palette software, was that called, and totally like. It was interesting, but it's I have this passion for data, so it was quite tempting then, the discussions with Solita. But for me, it was this kind of realization that these guys are doing something in a different way. They are kind of courageous enough to kind of prove that the way that they are doing stuff is actually kind of creating an impact and doing a difference on a market, even though it's a little bit kind of hard to understand maybe. But yeah.
And when did Solita start in Finland? Where's the origin of Solita?
Yeah, Solita is actually from Tampere, which is a little bit like a Silicon Valley nowadays in Finland. There are these kind of big cloud companies like Cybercom and Nordcloud and so on are from Tampere also. So a lot of that kinds of companies there, but Solita was founded already 25 years ago, or which year is it now? I thought it was
2020.
Oh yeah. So 25 years ago, and ever since they have been like developer company from the beginning, a spin-off from Nokia, which was their first kind of big client. And there they also kind of bumped into huge amounts of data with the Chinese telecom companies and so on. So that's kind of in the DNA, this kind of approach to data, and also kind of an opportunistic way of looking at the market and trying to find new ways of doing stuff and new tech and just a little bit wild ideas.
Yeah, because I think Solita has now come into the market and is now, I think, in 2020 a known brand in the IT consulting space in Sweden. I think I remember the first time I met Solita was at one of the conferences. I was doing a round table moderation for this is the Solita table, and then I got to talk to some very cool, quite senior guys or founding guys. I can't remember who it was, but it was some of the, and they were cool. They were super cool. I remember this.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit different.
Yeah.
And I think then you were like I guess like 600-700 around 2016, 17.
Yeah.
And now Solita is like what, 12 or 1500?
Yeah, 1,200 now, and now we're actually at that time. So Solita actually had a company only in Finland.
Yes.
So we had only the Finnish offices.
Yes.
And Sweden, and also simultaneously Estonia was our first kind of entries abroad, and we're now in 6 different countries. So we are expanding really fast, and. We founded the Solita AB, the Swedish company, in 2018 in January. So actually, kind of our journey hasn't been that long, but now we're already 125 people and growing. So it has been really an interesting and fast journey.
Yeah, and now to ask a question then. If I take Sweden and even an even smaller dot pond of Stockholm. It's a quite intense market when it comes to BI, data warehousing. And this industry is quite interesting because we have a lot of the older players, we have the big vendors, has head offices here, we have some newer spin-offs, smaller companies that are still working in the same space that, Spark is a good example. Yeah. And then you have, completely new kind of startup scene, very much data AI, hardcore. Peltarion is here, but also consultancies who are sort of coming into this even more machine learning. So how would you describe the Swedish market, and how would you describe Solita's position and what you want to, what is your USP, unique selling point? Or what's your story?
Yeah, we have kind of when we came to the market, so of course, like in Finland, you have 25 years of history and people kind of know you, and you have this kind of a broad variety of services that you provide to your customers and so on. You operate on the public and private sectors. And when we came to Sweden, so first we decided that our entry will be on the private sector only, focusing on cloud-based data platforms. And we didn't talk about data warehousing. We don't talk about BI.
No, exactly.
and what we're talking about is how to help larger enterprises and companies to become data-driven for real. And our approach is also combining different skill sets. So you have to have kind of a service and business design skill set to understand how a human works, and then you have to have different kinds of data competencies, of course, cloud infrastructure competencies. You have to integrate, you have to do APIs, you have to develop maybe some software and services. So combining all of these kind of aspects we have this kind of a 9-piece data-driven puzzle with all kinds of pieces in the puzzle that you have to figure out before you can become data-driven. And actually kind of have data as an asset.
That sounds like an interesting topic to get more into. Nine pieces of a puzzle, you said, to become data-driven. Oh. Should we? Could you give it like a quick intro? What are the 9 pieces?
Yeah, it's kind of a framework, because usually when somebody tells you that we need to become data-driven, we need to be better in serving our customers or more efficient in our processes and so on. So. It's a human nature that you start kind of figuring out solutions. You go into the tech piece directly, and we data lake and data warehouse, and then we need this and that, and a little bit algorithms, and then we need this app. But what is the most important and the toughest part maybe is to kind of define the strategy and what actually the data drivenness means for your company. What is the level?
From a business point of view.
Yes. Is it that you have awesome dashboards, or is it that you inject kind of data in your daily processes and automate with AI machine learning? Or is it that you actually sell database services or data? So it becomes your merchandise instead. So, and then there is a lot of variation between these different kinds of options. But just to kind of, just to kind of figure out that kind of first. And of course, it's a transformation. We talk about data-driven transformation. I'm a big push on the transformation because it means so much. When you start to kind of treat data as an asset, so it all of a sudden breaks down your old structures, because that asset is important for everybody in the organization. So you can't have this hierarchical kind of businesses here, IT there, these silos and levels, but it kind of brings the company to kind of around one common topic, and it tends to break a little bit of the old rules. And there you have to also kind of keep in mind the different ways of working, processes, your kind of organization, skill sets, and all of that kind of supporting. Tech part is quite easy. There is fantastic solutions, and you can put up whatever with the modern technology and the cloud. But the most important thing is to think about what is our kind of ambition in the data drivenness, and then start to figure out, how are we going to make this happen?
I'm eager to go to the analytical ladder, but have you heard about that concept, the analytical ladder kind of thing?
No. Enlighten me.
I mean, like
go for it.
So there are many different ways to describe the journey to become sort of data and AI driven. And some of those concepts has been around for years. I think maybe Gartner had a storyline around this, but there are very many variations on it. But it goes a little bit something like first we come from descriptive reporting, right? We're looking at the past, and now we want to be diagnostic, and then we are moving towards predictive and prescriptive. And then at the top of this ladder nowadays, we can have AI, and it's interesting because I think in the conversations we've had here, and this is why we want to talk to you about this, is that to some degree, yes, it's a fine analogy, but we also need to debunk some myths here, because it's one way. I mean, we have been talking about the difference between advanced analytics and machine learning engineering as an example. Yeah. So hardcore, the analytical ladder is sort of still is going with the hat on that data is done for insights, right? And we are data scientists, it's more advanced analytics and different. We can use more fancy algorithms to create insights. Whilst if you're hardcore coming from that the machine learning is a new coding paradigm. You don't need an analytical ladder to start with neural networks if you understand the problem and you solve the problem. Yeah. So that's a little bit the framing. So how do you see this sort of?
I think the analytical ladder, as you call it, it might be kind of a development of the different solutions. I would see that kind of I don't know if it's a maturity of a company. It doesn't have anything to do with that, I think, because if you look at it kind of in a data-driven world, you might have all of those solutions. Yes. Or parts of those solutions. So I think that is kind of describing different kind of the evolution of technology more than the maturity of a company.
And I think this is the point, right? Because it was used as a maturity concept, and it was used so a little bit like you need to do that, and then you need to do that. And I think that can tie back into maybe elaborate a little bit more about what you said. Warehousing is just one of a data manipulation need you have in a data platform with many other needs. And if you start looking at the analytical ladder, we have different data management scenarios.
Exactly.
It has no starting and end. It has a use case that needs a certain type of manipulation.
Exactly. It's like picking the right tool for the
for the
for
job.
the method for the job. What makes the kind of use case come alive?
And if I tie it back now to a little bit how you describe Solita, the way I understand the storyline is a little bit like, let's not talk about that we are a BI company. Let's not talk about that we are advanced analytics or machine learning company. So it's more about the whole platform is here and there are many different facets how we can use it. Yeah. And ultimately we don't only need techie guys, we need to create value.
Exactly. That's very good interpretation. And what we have kind of had as our punchline is actually we're the data company. That's what we say. Yeah. So that's our kind of a positioning on the market. And but that's totally correct. So the holistic view on data and data drivenness, and it doesn't have to be. There are lots of different tools and methods, and you name it. And you need all kinds of pieces, and that's only kind of usually we just kind of circle around the tech piece. That's the easiest.
And to now move, okay, so that's Solita, I think, and a little bit like that. Where's the state of you started on the private sector, so where is the state of the enterprise in understanding this? Where are they? How does their landscape look like today, and how does this resonate? Do they understand what you're talking about?
Yes, it was funny because 2017, when we started meeting potential clients, so they were very kind of wowed by the reference cases from Finland, what we had already done. And they were like, oh my God, that would be awesome, but we are not even close to that. And there was very little talk about cloud. AWS had just started in Sweden, and we had already then been working with AWS for 8 years.
And you're comparing like Finnish to Swedish type of companies.
Yeah. Yes. And because we did only have reference cases from Finland, so and also kind of we started like the development, the programming in AWS cloud, and then they started pushing the kind of the data side into the cloud and so on. So that's why we have been there for a long time, and also Snowflake, for example. So we have been kind of working with Snowflake many years before they found themselves in the Nordics. So that's a little bit awesome thing as well. So we were the pioneers, and nobody understood. It felt like at Diesel, when I was calling to the shops. So I was doing that again, and people are like, wow, what a story.
I can just imagine they were trying to pigeonhole you. Are you a BI company? Can you do Power BI? Are you a warehouse company? Or are you a cloud company? Yeah. Is that it, right?
Exactly so. And they were like, would you be able to do AI POC? Because that was cool thing to do then. And we're like, yeah, but we maybe should be starting like thinking about your core business and that. And it was like a little bit of mismatch there, how to communicate and discuss. But we had the kind of the strong belief that the kind of the cloud era is coming. Not cloud era, but cloud era.
That's a good one.
Cloud era was already gone. Sorry. Yeah,
but speaking about Finland, I think that they are a good role model in many senses. Especially, I think they already in 2017 had like a national strategy for AI, and then Sweden and Germany and France and Great Britain came in 2018, and they started to do things. But Finland was one of the first, I think, and they also have these kind of new initiatives. I'm sure if you heard about these kind of new big HPC centers in Finland, the Lumi kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's really impressive what they are trying to do.
Yeah.
But given that you have now been in Sweden for, and driving Solita here in Sweden for some time, how would you compare like the level of AI or data readiness in Sweden to Finland?
I think I think there is a kind of let's do a comparison here about kind of the how Finns and Swedes make decisions and how we are. And I have to quote first my fantastic colleague Pekka Ahola, who is working here in Sweden, and he described that in each Finn there lives a little engineer.
But not in Sweden?
Not in Sweden.
He hasn't identified that really yet, but that was a funny description of the kind kind of the everything tech is really interesting, and engineering is really kind of I have always said that if we would combine these countries, Finland and Sweden is awesome in selling, marketing, describing and so on. Finns maybe not that much, but they're really good in tech and they're really good engineers. So we have like the front office and the back office. So I think that would be an awesome combination.
So you think it's even down to a cultural, grain here, like part of the Finnish gene?
Yes, and I think it comes down to the kind of way of making decisions. Because in Finland, as a manager, you can just make a decision right there and then. And that was also a surprising thing when my colleagues came to Sweden. They were like, "Oh, this meeting went really well. We're ready to sign." I was like, "You have like 6 months ahead of you." It was just an opening meeting, and because in Finland, it is the culture that as a manager, you should be able to make a decision without involving people at that point, and then the implementation happens, and then you start the change management part and kind of convincing
a bit more
people.
agile in that,
maybe the kind of the whole implementation and the people have accepted the solution is actually as long time period as it's in Sweden, but in Sweden we include a lot of people in the decision process, which I'm both Swede and a Finn, both nationalities, so I really love that way, because then you kind of have already kind of tested the idea with people before you start implementing, and it's a lot easier. It's a kind of to have the engagement from the beginning, and you also test your own points of view.
Förankra, so you say in Swedish.
Yes. Förankra, and that's kind of the.
We use that word anchoring, but it doesn't even förankra as a Swedish word. Do we have a real English word for that?
I don't know.
It's part of a consensus decision-making culture, that word.
Exactly, yeah. And we were just working actually with the different kind of decision-maker personas.
Fika decision-making, förankra.
Yeah, and we were working with our kind of decision-maker personas to try to understand them. And we have our colleague from Germany running those workshops. And she had like a decision-making process that they have identified, or the kind of buyer's journey mapped out from Germany. Is there something that you would like to change? And we're like, our process is not linear. It goes back and forth, and there is a lot of loops and hoops. It goes here and there are a lot of people involved. So so it's a little bit kind of a different way of approaching. But I think that the discussions have been done now in Sweden. So the kind of the acceleration of cloud and the data platforms and the level of discussion in the enterprises now that we're having is fantastic. So kind of these 2 years, maybe
a lot happened in 2 years.
Yes, a lot of discussion, and now it's time to act and implement and do, and also kind of the cloud and the solutions have also kind of developed during this time. So we really have a fantastic starting point.
What do you mean the cloud solution have developed? Because I think one core issue that to have, I think in general in the world, is that the big tech giants of the world are the cloud providers, and they are leading with such a big margin that it's almost dangerous for Europe, Sweden, Finland, and a lot of countries. Would you agree with that, or?
Yeah, but that's true, because we have like these giants. We don't have the Alibaba cloud yet, but anyhow, so there is kind of these giants, and I have been really concerned about not having a European cloud, really a cloud provider, and the kind of what I'm aiming at is maybe the services that are available in the cloud. Yeah. So there is so much you can do compared, because the
like
development,
layers on top the normal
exactly,
kind of,
yeah. So, but it would be nice to have a little bit more competition on the cloud provider side, and we'll see what happens, because it is a little bit scary. Yeah, I think always when there is just a few big ones steering, so it becomes a little bit spooky.
And now the enterprise is ready to move and go into cloud. Where are they moving? What part of the platform are they now really sinking their teeth in general? Or maybe it's different. It's
very different. We discussed with one very, very large company here, and they were asking how to start their cloud journey and what is our kind of advice. And we have like these 7 steps or 7 different options that we have been trying to kind of generalize and map out. And actually you can start with everything in the same time, depending the use case. And you have to always have the use case. You have to have something that is of value. You can, of course, do a cloud migration and just bump up everything that you have from on-prem to the cloud. It maybe adds some value. Maybe you get some cost savings or so on. It can be a use case in itself, or then it's some kind of a new solution, or then it's some parts of data or whatever. So it's very different approaches that companies take. But it's a kind of what is the most critical thing to do first. But more and more, I think the kind of the discussions are around creating value, either to kind of customers or to the company, and that's kind of getting more and more kind of as a discussion topic, more than just kind of cost saving by moving stuff to cloud.
And who do you talk to when it comes to the cloud journey and doing this? Is it to IT, or is it to is it to a chief data officer, or how does it look like right now?
Yeah,
who's having the conversation?
Yeah, the chief data officer is of course our kind of a very close friend, and of course there is usually kind of a IT department involved in those discussions, but very kind of we have meetings where we have 25 people joining from companies and so on. So there is a lot of kind of and now we are kind of coming into that point that somebody actually owns this topic, because usually it has been kind of some kind of a C-level decision that we will become data driven, and then there has been somebody who is called business IT who tries to figure this one out, and it's a really hard role. But now they kind of gather a forum of different aspects and people around the same table to make the decisions and so on. So that there is a lot of kind of participants.
So is this actually some sort of a critical success factor or prerequisite to do this well? That if you, I mean, like I'm hint. I'm coming from that. If you have an IT department running the cloud journey, it very fast becomes a tech discussion, an infra discussion, and actually the value. What are we going to use it for? What's the use case? In to be a little bit rude, it's not always IT has a clue on what the business value is, cost or data center efficiency. Yes, of course, but in order to drive a new use case. There kind of need to be a use case owner. Yes,
you have to have like a mix of skills and views and so on, and the business and IT need to kind of work together, because if we just do it for the kind of as an IT solution, so you might as well do like a data warehouse on the old SQL server.
So what you highlight now with Swedish type of decision making. Consensus decision making, and in order to basically now do this properly, if you haven't already fixed your organizational mandates, having a boss of it all, it becomes for us. It becomes a team of decision maker for different angles to be able to cope with the mandate, I guess, and cope with the understanding. Yeah, and it's also kind of our duty in the meetings, if there is kind of a IT comes to us and said we need to go to cloud or whatever, so we need to kind of say, okay, but maybe to the next meeting you take this person with you and that person. So also to kind of guide from the very beginning how to think, so that we get it right from the beginning, because we want to create impact and positive impact. So do you actually now think like you have a prerequisite? So when you go into these first meetings, someone comes to you and say, we need to get started. How do we get started? Do you talk about the prerequisites like this then, or? Yes, absolutely. It's our kind of a theory that you are not going to kind of succeed if you're going to do this only from business view or only from tech view, without kind of the pieces of the puzzle thought out. So it's kind of our approach, and because we have been doing this for such a long time, and we have seen so many customer cases also, and we have made mistakes, and that's where it comes from.
I think that's really interesting to think about mistakes and to think about challenges, and to think, if you, as a company as in Solita, want to help a company to become more data-driven, what are the common pitfalls? What are the common mistakes that companies do that you have seen so far?
Yeah, well, of course, these kind of pitfalls is exactly what we were talking about, that you take the IT approach only. and then you create something. You can implement whatever. A fantastic like reference architecture somewhere.
A small prototype or something.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
it never moves into production in some way.
Yeah, and then it's
a prototype. What do we call it? Church graveyard.
The prototype graveyard. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think also this kind of a lift and shift without rethinking is one pitfall.
Yeah, who invented the lift and shift? I want to club someone every time I hear it. Seriously,
yeah,
it must be a management consultant who came up with that, who doesn't know tech.
No, just thought this is easy.
But lift and shift, because that word came up 2 or 3 years ago, and then it was everywhere. And if you ever, by the way, decommission a warehouse or move the warehouse, not only talking data platform, you know that will never work.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, but it's interesting. Where did that come from?
I don't know. Not from Solita at least. So.
Because you have had that conversation with several clients, I'm sure. I've heard it several times.
Yeah.
Been involved in that and walked away from it.
Yeah.
So what's the problem with lift and shift?
Well, lift and shift is that you actually kind of when you.
What is it? Let's start with that. What do we mean with lift and shift?
Lift and shift. So, as I understand it, is to take your on-premise solutions, the old kind of legacy systems or whatever, and pop them up to the cloud without doing any changes.
So it's a little bit. If you have a rat nest on-prem, you take your rat nest and you shift it and put your rat nest on the cloud.
Yes, exactly. So nothing changes except that you're now in the cloud. And
and what's the value of that?
Yeah, you tell me.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's lift and shift. Yeah, and I don't know. Maybe there is some kind of a
why? Because this has been such a big word in the big enterprises. Is it some sort of running by fear that we are behind, so now we should have done this 5 years ago, but now we don't have time to think, so now we do lift and shift? It's almost like I've heard those conversations.
Yeah, I think
in really big Swedish nice corporations.
Yeah, and it can be that we just need to move. We just need to get to the cloud, and that's some kind of fast solution. And of course, if you have like the server halls from hell and a lot of kind of maintenance and this and that, so maybe you can calculate some kind of cost benefits for
data. This is a data center business case in that case, I guess.
Yeah.
I have to disagree a bit here, I think, and
nice.
take a bit challenging, or at least play the devil's advocate in some way. And I can speak from some experience from Spotify and other companies, but there is a problem with, of course, managing things that is not the core business that you're dealing with. Is your core business to change hard drives? Is it your core business to upgrade operating systems and fix, security problems that you have? Is your core business to make sure that the application can scale and handle, for example, automatic horizontal scaling when a load change? Is your problem to really try to buy computers that you have to cope with the peaks, but not with the average use case? Is there some value in having a more flexible kind of cloud solution that may be able to adapt to the situation and increase and reduce the scale as necessary? Don't you see any value in that?
No. I think this lift and shift. Because and now I talk for you. Maybe you should answer it. But I'm really passionate because it pisses me off. Right? Of course, we want to shift and lift the game to cloud. Right? We want to migrate to cloud. But to think it's even decoded in the same way, or take an old code base which is set up for some sort of setup, and then think it will even run properly. No. And then at the same time, maybe if you had an old warehouse structure here, and now you have beautiful technology in cloud, maybe you should rethink the fundamental data strategy at the same time. So lift and shift, the whole where we come into now, is about the method and the strategy when you move to cloud. It's not that simple. Is someone simplified this too far? So that's the argument with lift and shift. To go to cloud, of course. Yeah. The fundamental logic that you highlight, of course. But how can you really do a lift and shift? Does that exist? I don't think it exists. If you look into the tech, I mean, like a classic example, you're on a Cloudera setup. Horton moving into Cloudera, and now
moving, or I don't know. It wasn't really voluntary, I don't think.
But the example now is like talking the vendor marketing. You know, okay, now we have Cloudera CDP 7.2, so now we can now you can seamlessly move it and run it on cloud, whichever cloud you want. You only need to read, you know, 2 layers down and say, oh, it's a different code base, it's a different setup. So, you know, the migration story is not the lift and shift, even if you would love it to be. It doesn't work like that. So that's why I'm a little bit, I want to challenge when everyone says lift and shift. Migrate, yes. Move, yes.
Exactly.
But lift and shift, it dummifies something that is quite complex.
It's too simplified. It sounds like that it will be easy peasy and really fast, and usually you kind of end up in not at all.
If we shift the argument and say, you know, that there are certainly a lot of bad ways to move to the cloud and migrate to the cloud, no question. And yeah, I've seen and done myself a number of bad things in that way. Especially in just moving the cloud to a virtual computer and think that's it. And now it's just cloud-based.
Yeah.
Obviously really bad. But if you were to do it the proper way, you know, if you were to really think, you know, this is the awesome way, or if you have some example, perhaps some company that you have helped migrating to the cloud and you're really proud of, what would you say the best way or some example of a good use case for migrating to the cloud would be?
Yeah, there are of course like plenty of ways of doing that, but I think that kind of the main point, for example, is that you start from something that is very core of your business, because you're starting a transformation and you want to create an impact. And if you start with, as we talked about, some kind of a idea or POC with some super innovation that doesn't have anything with your core business to do, so you're not kind of the first steps to cloud is not. It's not going to create any real impact or real value for your business. So kind of being courageous enough to do something to kind of move something in your very core. And that's kind of the scary part, because we don't
Everyone
like change.
Everyone is scared about changing.
Yeah,
yes.
exactly. And kind of to be there in the core, to take something that you know that is valuable but can be even more valuable, and start to thinking in a different way, because that's also the kind of cloud's benefit, is that you actually get to do stuff that wasn't possible to do before. So therefore we should kind of come away from these things. We have always done this way. And this is how it works. I have heard
first principle thinking.
So have you heard about first principle thinking?
No, but this is really fun. I learn a lot today. All kinds of theories. So please.
So it's obvious when you talk to a lot of people, we all have our different references, and then all of a sudden we go into a reference that we all been fascinated by something on different angles, and first principle is super cool. But this story really talks about a fascination around Elon Musk, and you know how Elon Musk is, has his entrepreneurship, and at the core of this, one of the ideas that he highlights is first principle, which is essentially a philosophical idea from the beginning, but then taken up on understanding it from a business context or an engineering context. So we've been quite fascinated and using first principle as a way to understand what does it really mean to become data-driven is a little bit like, well, if you have an analog process and you computerize on top of that, will that have a 10x effect on your value, or what this is all about? First principle means going back to the fundamental core, understanding what your fundamental core is, and then, thinking in a completely different way.
Yeah.
And we have had this conversation when we ask people what we mean with this, and some people ends up in the corner, the business perspective of first principle. So what's the core of your business, right? IBM, Patrick Couch, are the information processing at the core of IBM, right? Yeah. And then understanding that you can then rethink your business. And then, of course, Elon Musk has the whole engineering perspective.
Both, I would say.
He has both, actually. And what's the engineering perspective, Anders?
Yeah, I mean, I think you actually phrased it well, even though you didn't understand you were speaking about first principles.
No.
But the dare to challenge the way things are done in the usual way.
Yeah.
And the classical example from Elon Musk is like you can speak about Tesla or SpaceX or SolarCity or whatnot, but I think the easiest way to talk about this is SpaceX and rockets. Okay, let's build things that goes into space. And the way it's done today is you launch something into space and then you crash it. And that's like many hundreds of millions of dollars that you just smash in the ground. And does it really have to be that way? Can you rethink it? Can you dare to challenge the way it's usually done and actually think, is there some core physical principles that we can think about to solve this? And perhaps rethink the whole idea and start to have reusable rockets. Well, it seemed to be possible, and suddenly they have Starlink and sending 42,000 satellites into space, and crazy thing. So just rethinking the ways things are done in the usual way, and being having the courage to do so, I think is one of the core concepts of first principle thinkings.
Yeah. That's nice that I actually talk about it without knowing.
No, but the why I like first principle is because I've been talking about that and trying to get people to understand that this is not really reinventing the core idea. It's putting something on top of an analog idea. Yeah. So I've been using this without. So first principle I picked up, actually through you, Yeah. And I love it. I just love it as a way to explain, as a metaphor, what this is really all about.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's kind of the puzzle that we were kind of talking about before. So that kind of helps in structuring this whole kind of thinking. Challenging, thinking what is this data drivenness and how does it affect our business from different angles, and what do we need for kind of prepare this kind of change and so on.
So just to close the discussion about what the challenges are to migrate and move to the cloud and become more data driven. I guess you have the 9 pieces, and that perhaps is like an overview of the challenges are, or can you think about other ways to just in as concise way you can think of describe the top challenges?
Yeah, the top challenge is actually to do something beside not be courageous enough to go into the core. And the other challenge is to keep you away from the tech corner as long as possible, and to think around how this is going to impact in this and that. And also to kind of to keep it very simple. Usually you should kind of not overthink it. Because usually we get kind of carried away also, because the change and the impact can be huge just with the very simple solutions as well. Yeah. And that's usually the case. So when you overthink and overcomplicate stuff, so you end up with a smaller value and a lot of money spent on developing something. So start small. It doesn't have to be perfect, and then you just kind of iterate it forward. So
agile thinking again.
And how have you? What is your view on this sort of one fundamental challenge that is talked about quite a lot, data literacy, or the challenge that we don't have everyone in the same room at all speaking the same language or having even a reference point? Typically, then you have business. If I go to a more traditional business, they are fantastic in their domain, but they have no reference point at all to what we are talking about. IT might have some sort of reference point, but they don't understand the business. So we have this translation problem. Yeah. So how do you see that part of the challenge?
But that's totally correct, and we usually also have this kind of we have companies who see that the data is something for the IT department and the nerds in the basement. So that's and you're kind of, that is the data maturity, I think. How does your kind of company how do you say it? Preserve, or I don't know how you say that, but how they see the data.
Seeing data as an asset is, I think you had that as one of your cornerstones here.
That's super.
But it's quite interesting because as soon as you start looking at it as an asset, you kind of understand that you want processes to manage and maximize the value of your assets. Yeah. So I think that's that's a quite easy indicator of maturity.
Yes, and that is kind of the maturity level where you want to be when everybody perceives that as an asset, because then you also get the engagement. Everybody gets interested. If you put money on the table, so there is not kind of a lot left after a while. But if you put kind of in an immature company, you put the data on the table, so there is no owner of that, right? Yeah. And all of a sudden, if you come up to that thinking that, oh my goodness, what all we can do with this data. So then we come to this kind of what I mentioned also, this kind of data trading, when all of the kind of different parts of the organization start to kind of understand what kind of value they're sitting with. You know, oh, should I put it into the enterprise data lake so that everybody else gets a part of that? But what do I get in exchange? So then you start data trading, and that's where the interesting stuff starts to happen.
Yeah. And I know that you have a passion for also like diversity and biases in data and things like that. And let's try to go to that topic soon.
We can go there now, I think, or maybe wrap this up.
Just one small question before that, because moving to the cloud is, of course, very beneficial from many points of view. It can be economically very beneficial. It can be that you can move faster and develop your products in a more efficient way and simply focus on the core business problem you have, and not having to change hard drives is simply nice to avoid having to do. But there are problems as well. And one problem is that you could have like data safety problems, or you could have data like integrity problems if you move all data to American or Chinese companies. Is that something you want to do all the time? And then the alternative, you have to think about, okay, well, then I have to manage everything ourselves, and that's not easy either. What's your thinking here? Is there situations where, let's take a medical use case or something, some company that have patient journal text or something, and is there a situation where you think, this is actually not a good time to move to the cloud, or at least not for the big American or Chinese companies?
Yeah, it's I think kind of from the principal point of view, so we preserve cloud as safe as on-prem, because you can break into either one, I guess. But I liked it a lot. We had this big kind of digital events meeting point Solita arranged last week, and we had Telia talking there about kind of the movement data. And I think that kind of thinking that you can actually do I'm going to say shitload of stuff.
That's okay.
It's
an after work.
After work, come on, please.
It's not an American program, so that's good. Okay. So anyhow, so you can do a lot of cool stuff with aggregated and anonymized data as well. So you don't have to put all the details in the cloud. So of course you have to kind of carefully consider what to put in the cloud, and that's also kind of the discussion that we have with our kind of larger customers from financial sector or medical sector, as you mentioned. So what is kind of what data is okay to have in the cloud, and in what format?
And let me ask you, I'm not sure how involved you are in these kind of discussions. I'm unfortunately a bit involved in, like, should we build like a Swedish infrastructure or a Finnish infrastructure or European infrastructure for data and AI, or should we simply rely on the big cloud providers? And then people think, yeah, of course we want to be able to have our own, and I think we all agree that there's a big leap, AI divide between the tech giants and the rest of the world. But then the alternative, we had a number of disasters in Swedish authorities. And then they had data leaks and problems where very sensitive data had been leaked. And of course, if you think that the alternative is that you have to manage everything ourselves, and think that you can have the same level of security like super big tech giants have, that's also questionable. So this is a very tricky thing for me, at least. What's your thinking here? Should we? How can we be less dependent on the tech giants, but still have the security that we want to have?
Yeah, I think what we are looking at with our clients many times is kind of some kind of hybrid architecture, and there is very few of our clients that choose just one cloud. So they usually have like multiple clouds that they're relying on just in case, and then something on-prem as well. So it's a hybrid environment at the moment, and that's a really hard thing to kind of, because there is positives and negatives in both these scenarios, and it's really hard to kind of say that, okay, but why would European cloud be that much better? And then there is a lot of differences in the cloud maturity comparing kind of with the history background, for example, Germany. They don't even want to use credit cards. So it's because the kind of a storage of personal data is, and then in Finland they're totally crazy about the cloud and everything is up there. So so it's like a kind of also the feeling of security somehow in individuals. But very valid kind of a consideration, and I think we kind of need to have this debate. It's really, really important that we kind of have it up to discussion, at least to be aware of how to build kind of a secure cloud solutions.
Tough problem.
It is a tough. Sorry, I couldn't provide you any
but
better solution for that.
Let's end that note with almost quoting Robert Luciani. Let's solve the issues and security issues with more tech. So basically, there are, even if we have it in American setups, we can morph. We can do many things to basically have our own, bring your own keys and do many things that, if you want to, it should be even fairly safe in this way. I mean, like, so there is, instead of, so using tech also to figure this stuff out.
It's fun to hear you promote tech. You know, I love that.
You're indoctrinating me. I love it. But should we move into a new theme? I think you had one going there.
Yes, so I think this is actually a very interesting topic for me as well, and we speak a lot about this in Peltoran as well, and speaking about diversity and biases that do exist in data, and if we start to become more data-driven, it's easy to just, increase and even reinforce sometimes the biases that we have historically. So perhaps you can, I know you're engaged in a number of initiatives here. Perhaps you can just start by giving some background for, what type of initiatives you are working with in this kind of settings.
Yeah, mainly I got in touch with the Female Engineer Network here in Sweden and the Ingenjörsjobb, where I now sit in the board as well, and started to talk about kind of the inclusion and what is actually kind of a equality. And I am a strong believer that equality is on an individual basis, because you can always set up different kind of groupings and compare.
You mean it's a subjective way, or what do you mean?
Yeah, but it kind of that we are all kind of individuals. We have our own different kinds of dimensions, and usually equality is very much kind of discussed among like men and women, which is, of course, it does exist inequality there between those groupings. But so there is kind of a lot of inequality in between different dimensions. So we can pick out whatever dimension and start comparing, but I think we have to start appreciating the individuals. And my biggest concern is the kind of maybe lack of female, and that we have like that are the people who are now building kind of in this technological revolution or whatever we're in the midst of, so that we have the kind of a possibility to build a totally new kind of society with new structures and rules, because we are very much kind of we want to do stuff in a different way, but like in any company who's doing the transformation, so we are also kind of prohibited by the old structures that has been built. And even though you would like to do it in a different way, so the structures are still there. And as you say and mention, so it's so easy now to kind of build based on the old structures, because it's a hard job to change that. And when we have like a kind of technology community, that there is a majority of men and maybe in some companies even kind of very in the same age groups and from the same background and so on. So it's impossible to build solutions that take in consideration how the actual society looks like and taking in the different points of view. And that, I think, is really concerning. For example, there was like at Google, there was like 10% of AI specialists are women. And how do you then build like AI solutions that reflect society, and that's just one kind of one point of view to the equality question.
But let me take the other side of the discussion a bit, just to have both sides of the coin, because it's easy to also jump into the ethical bandwagon, if you say so, and just say it's so dangerous with being data-driven. But you could also think it's dangerous to be human-driven. In the sense it's kind of hard to know. Let's take a concrete example. Let's take recruitment or something.
Yes.
And we know the kind of horrible example from Amazon and their type of way to automate that. But still, if we have humans that drives recruitment, for example, how do we know or avoid like biases in that case? Yeah. Isn't it even harder to detect that potentially if it's human-driven compared to data-driven? Or what's your thinking there?
Yeah, but I think also in the recruitment processes, so you should also kind of, in the recruitment process, you should have like a kind of reflection of of different backgrounds and ages and so on, participating in the recruitment of a person. Yeah. So that it kind of that candidate is also looked from
But it's hard to have
angles.
like super junior people like involved perhaps in recruitment process.
Yeah, maybe. And then what we actually also do, so we have these trainings of getting rid of biases or identifying your own biases. And then of course you can wash the CVs, for example, so that you don't have gender, you don't have pictures, you don't have names and so on, just to get a kind of unopinionated view on things. And then, of course, for us, for example, so we are very much kind of striving for kind of having this kind of a structure in our company. We're absolutely not there yet, but this is like our ambition. And it's more like, okay, we want to have more of kind of different kinds of backgrounds and so on. And it's really driving force in the recruitment as well. And we can't stop the recruitment process before our kind of the funnel looks like the society looks like. So we can't just kind of, okay, we got 100.
Distribution basically that
a little bit kind of. So it kind of reflects because then you have to work harder, and we're working also with the kind of the identifying the personas and where different kinds of people are, where they, when do they surf and look at the kind of job ads and this and that. So we're trying to really kind of pinpoint different kinds of personas and how to reach out to them, because the communication has to be also kind of a little bit different.
So bringing on the point that Henrik mentioned, and perhaps what Robert previously said as well, do you think tech can be a tool to guide diversity or to
Yeah, it can be both.
It?
It can be both, because of course, like people who build in algorithms and so on. So we're people, and then it's of course of the data sets and how we kind of train the algorithms to how it's like our children. So they become what we we teach them.
It's a new children.
The algorithm is the new children.
Yeah,
in
it
this
is.
way,
Yeah.
and they are flawed. Like the creators are flawed.
Yeah, but I think it's again like the combination that we truly believe in also is like the combination of human insight and tech. Yes. So you have to have that, because what is kind of what is the strength of a human is empathy, and the kind of the caring. Then you can have algorithms, they might not have the empathy, not yet at least. I haven't seen.
And I think this resonates also with a theme that, even back to talking to Louise Kallenberg at SKR, that this whole idea that these pitting humans against AI, or the future is clearly a cyborg, I almost said, but the ultimate value will come from them interacting together and playing to their strength.
Exactly. I'm so happy that you say that. And now I just kind of remember a couple of years ago, I was at one conference and there was a lot of this topic, are the machines against people or human, and what, so tired. And I was totally bored in that conference, and I wrote to my mentor that this is total bullshit. That is, why can't we just see this as a possibility to enhance like our capability of making good choices? Because somewhere in my cyborg thing.
Yeah, but to me it's a little bit like the conversation came in one way, and then it was even the ethical discussion become hyped.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, I think this is a little bit. It's like you can almost find the year. Where's the hyped word? We have this joke, right? Now we talk about, I don't know, we digitalization, digital transformation, and then it was big data, and then so ethical AI was even a hype word to me in 2019, and I'm not meaning it as that it's not important. But the conversation almost went to the point where people wanted to pit this conversation one against another. And I rhetorically understand it in terms of highlighting the dangers and understanding the bias. So essentially, it's good, right? But it's not so useful as what you can do with it if you start trying to understand, okay, we think this should work together. Number one principle. We think we should play to our strength and their strengths.
Yeah.
And then what is their strengths? What is our strengths? What are their weaknesses? And now I think the whole ethical debate comes to a much more sophisticated level if you lift it a little bit and not the polarization type discussion. I think is not helping.
No, usually it isn't.
Usually it isn't.
No, with whatever topic, actually. So,
if we try to make the discussion a bit more concrete as well, and say, let's keep to the recruitment topic, and say that, okay, we can think about different ways to think. In 5 years, I want recruitment to work like this. And you can say, okay, I want recruitment to be completely data only, so to speak. Where I can say, I want the recruitment to be completely human only. Or you want it to be cyber only, or however you should phrase it. Perhaps I'm thinking more. One of the terms used, at least in the EU context, is human-centric AI, saying basically it's still the human in control, but you basically use data and AI as a tool to augment what the humans can do. Is this, sorry for a leading question here, but is this a good way to phrase it, you think? In 5 years I'd like to have like a human in control, but with AI and data as a augmentation. That's the preferred recruitment process in the future.
I would like to see it more as a seamless cooperation than somebody in total control all the time, because we are not the best controllers.
Humans, you
know.
mean?
Yeah, exactly.
No, but let's actually try to be concrete and see if we can do a vision around this. I mean, let's make this as a use case. We have AI-centric 5 years ahead, and then if you break down the user journey of a recruiter, right, and you understand the data points and you understand the different tasks. There's so much, and then not being picky if it's machine learning or deep learning or simply data, right? If you look at that, there is a huge task of search, right? So how can we do world-class search in one way, right? And then you have sort, right? And then you have prioritizing, and then so you get to a point where you can basically do a lot of things. Which is, in my opinion, automation and mechanical, and where if you do, you talk to a machine that spits out the perfect list of candidates across the globe. Theoretically, to build that it's not that hard even, if you want to build it, right? And then so I'm used elaborating on that story, and then of course if you rethink recruitment from scratch, right? But then you get to a lot of other topics, right? Depending on what you're recruiting. In that, this is leadership, this is headhunting, this is sort of, I'm not going to have an AI calling up and do a.
Yes, I want to. Actually.
You want an AI to call Wallenberg? Hey, I have a new job for you. Chatbot.
You know how much time I spend on the phone with recruitment?
I love when I have a chatbot recruit.
I'm kidding a bit, but still.
But maybe you could have this pre-screening call. Hey, we have a job for you. Click 1 if you want to hear more.
No, but have you heard GPT-3 speaking? Okay, not going
no,
there.
but I think this is interesting because if you then take the human-centric approach, and then, okay, this is actually a cyborg happening in my head right now. It's quite interesting that, of course, that the computer part of the cyborg kicks in and searches the internet. The computer part kicks in and sort it and structure it. And on some sorting categories that I have defined, which is quite sophisticated now, might be decision model, right? And that, of course, we can do a lot, and then have a look at that. And you see it. It's not that.
So how does recruitment work at Solita? Can you?
Recruitment at Solita is we have like our in-house recruiters that are kind of headhunters, like the ninja.
Yeah, the ninja.
What does a ninja mean in recruitment terms?
I don't know. I don't actually know, but at that point we didn't actually have any titles in that sense, so everybody picked one that sounded good.
Cool.
So yeah, but but we have like people who are kind of running the recruitment process. But then our organization, our consultants and people leads, and depending on the role, are participating in the interview process. And we always start with the cultural match, the values, the value base, how we are.
Start, you mean like the first topic of discussion? Or?
First topic of discussion.
First filter.
Yeah, first filter. If you fit into this kind of the kind of values, what way do you work, and what kind of things do you appreciate, and how kind of But all that kind of stuff that kind of builds up the kind of the relationship and understanding from human to human. Then the second part is more kind of going through what the kind of work life is and what the kind of the role that was discussed and so on. If that was the right role, but if we feel that it could be something else and so on. So then it's from colleague to colleague. Then there is kind of a tech stuff going further and kind of a usually utilizing also scenario methods. So you sit with the whiteboard through Teams at this time, kind of asking, how would you, kind of a blank canvas, would you do this and that? And we take in quite a little people because from all the applications, because our kind of quality has to be quite high. And then all this, we don't ever sacrifice our cultural values for tech skills. Or vice versa. So it has to be a good combination. And the most of the tech also that there is a potential and there is passion, there is courage, and then there is kind of the person who is a kind of a laid back, a nice person who still kind of has the kind of wish to work in a kind of network and a community like ours. And then you have to have these kind of different steps there is only kind of like 3 steps in our recruitment process because it has to be also fast. So you
That's impressive.
Yeah, so you don't have to kind of keep it kind of people hanging for too long and waiting for a decision.
But I guess still you do have to spend quite some time with recruitment as a lot of companies. It is painful and very expensive. And it takes time to, the question about false positives or false negatives, If you hire a person that is a false positive, someone that actually didn't turn out well, that can be extremely costly.
Exactly, and that's where you have to screen quite thoroughly, like in the process. And we want to also make sure that this person actually belongs to Solita, because it's a horrible situation for both parties because our people are what we are. And we really want kind of everybody who comes in to enjoy and be at home. So it's really important to take these steps still. But I think absolutely, like automating stuff, we have also kind of built-in systems and stuff like that. So that helps us in like sorting and so on. But the most important thing I think is also to communicate correctly, to get your kind of the soul out of the company, so the people who actually feel that this could be something for me, so that it's not kind of generic job postings that we need a data engineer and you must have this ding 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 ding, but that you kind of
Python and Java.
Yeah. But you describe a little bit more of what we're looking for and who are we. So I think that's really
soft
interesting.
skills versus hard skills, is that way? One way to
maybe
it,
the company culture and describing the kind of soul and
because
so
what you're highlighting now is also the fit.
Yes.
So a recruitment process is not only about they are fitting us, but it's being very, very clear in what we are. So does this fit you and your personal agenda?
Exactly, because this is a relationship that is supposed to last for a long time. It's a big investment that we do, and it's also something that we will kind of rely. Are participating in our kind of business development and competency development, everything in contributing that we grow in a sustainable way and our customers are happy and so on. So it's the most critical part of the business, and therefore.
But if you were to just make a wish, say, I wish I didn't have to spend time with this kind of boring going through CVs or whatnot kind of process or step in the process. Is there some part that you wish this is something that we could make much more efficient and accurate in the recruitment process?
Yeah, I think somehow, but it's a very long. There are so many things that we should change in the whole kind of job seeking, how we do it. so it starts from the very grounds of how we have kind of how companies have kind of set up these processes and how we seek job and so on and apply for a job. So it's but I would like to see more kind of automation in that sense. But I would also like to see empathy being put into the results. So if the machine kind of sorts out the kind of the first part of the CVs and puts them into the good bucket and then the less interesting buckets or whatever, so that there still would be somebody just checking out that was this really kind of if we can find the golden nuggets from the less desirable but maybe potential basket. So that would of course make it a lot easier. Yeah. But I think it's really hard. We have been trying with dating apps, right? And all kinds of stuff to try to find like relationships. And
Tinder for recruitment.
Tinder for recruitment. I love it.
Yeah, we were talking about Tinder for projects and all kinds of stuff so that our consultants can kind of love a project where they want to work and so on. So yeah,
that's cool. That's new thinking.
Yeah, but it's a relationship that you build, and I think it's very hard to automate also relationship building. So you can have like the first impulses and so on, but the digital journey, of course, it's interesting in its kind of entirety. Some kind of I think that we can be better in kind of handling the funnel with automation and so on, and getting that kind of we have these reminders also. You're terribly late.
Good. Yeah. Should we go into another theme, or I would like to pick a theme now.
Yeah. Okay. Go for it.
So I would like to explore with you how you see the future of, if I use the words networked economy, gig economy, the future of employment, the future of consulting, the future of how enterprises will engage with experts. Where do you the consultant industry works in one way today, and we have some big American companies or whatever. We have some Nordic companies who are getting larger. We have brokers out there who's doing their part, and we have a lot of freelance guys, and we have small companies who's popping out of the mid-sized consultancies, start doing their own thing. So where do you think this whole way of finding talent and working with talent is going?
Yeah, I was just talking with my colleagues about this, and it's quite funny because we go from one era to another, and it's like a wave. So we come back and forth in this like thinking. So we know all that there was like the nearshoring or whatever offshoring trend booming at one point, and then they were like, okay, but they need to be local consultants, and we came to that extreme. Then there has been kind of the broker broker wave, and then again like, oh my God, this is not working.
Why is that not working?
Maybe it
What's what does brokering do well, and where does it not work? I have one customer who actually have changed their purchase strategy, a big company, and I was really kind of impressed about that, because they had divided the procurement processes into running business, changing business. Love that. Now this is interesting. Yes, and running businesses, and they had also a kind of written their resources. Running the business, and that's kind of broker business. I think that of course you can find the golden nuggets from there and so on, but usually kind of if you want to have some change going on, so you need to have a team in place. You need to have those advisors or somebody who has been doing this before, who can be your kind of guiding light and helping you to build, and also kind of transfer the knowledge to your organization. To think brokering for me is also a little bit like puts a lot of emphasis on the buyer being the orchestrator, advisor, and super expert themselves to really know what he wants and needs. And now we're not going into a data platform. Now you really need to know what data manipulation you're going for to recruit or to find the right, because the broker will not do that for you. No. And that's really hard. And I love that kind of running and changing.
this approach, because it's a totally different kind
because
it's a totally different consultancy work, let's say so.
Yeah, and if I have 2 of these and one is sick, I can ask for exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And I can use a broker for that. But I've never done AI before. What should I ask for? A little bit trickier, yeah?
Yeah. And
okay.
Yeah, and also the kind of the transformation, something new, something that if you want to be on top of things, so it has also kind of a little bit of a different kind of price picture. And there you can have big ones or small ones or whomever ones who suit the bill for kind of doing the change.
But if we now move on, should companies really use consultants if we want to become data driven? What's the purpose of the consultant? Because I've seen sort of like, we use consultants as a way to not needing to worry about this. We stay data illiterate. We don't really pick this stuff up. I use consultants to tick the box. I get the solution working, but the company who has sort of understood that, we need to transform into something else. What's the consultant role then versus, how don't you need to build this competence yourself?
Yeah, and I kind of reflect back to that puzzle again. So I think that if you want to do the transformation and you really kind of want to have data, for example, as an asset, and so on, so you need to kind of, it's a change of mindset and skills and so on. So what do you need then is somebody to kind of to set up kind of the first steps and the routines and show you the way.
You need someone to hold your hand or guide you.
And guide you.
This is exactly. Good value, of course.
We called ourselves as the kind of in a couple of years ago, like the digital travel guides. And that was that was our motto then before. But it was already back then. But that's kind of the whole point. And we believe in long-lasting relationships with the customer, but we are not there to do the same stuff over and over again, but we're there to take on the challenge first and then transfer the knowledge of that, and then we take on the next challenge and so on, and then gradually build a kind of the skill set of our customers to that level that they feel is supporting their kind of core business, and that level where they think that they need to have the in-house competency, because maybe they don't have to be the champions of everything, but what is kind of sufficient to maintaining, again, to the running and changing discussion a little bit.
I like this, but let's take again 5 years from now. We are talking about that we have a skills shortage of maybe 70,000 skilled 80 experts. So whether either way we look at it, as consultants, as freelancers, or as hiring them, we have a problem with talent, right? In some ways. So 5 years from now, what do you think the industry, is it working and functioning in the same way as now, or are we evolving into something else?
I hope that the kind of companies who are now more in a kind of traditional industries or whatever their core business might be in a kind of data, but they would be more kind of skilled in handling the technology and so on.
So one key trend is that we will have a higher, hand-holding in 5 years should be on a higher level of maturity. Yeah. They need to really step up their own game as well.
Yeah, because this is kind of
recruiting these people.
Yeah, because this is kind of the problem of because a lot of kind of product companies want to become like service companies, and they need to have the kind of the skills to support that business, because it's becoming their core, because the product is already so developed, so you can't kind of overdevelop that, but then you have to have the add-on services for the kind of a next phase of the growth of a company, and there you have to have a different skill set. So I truly hope and believe that companies do kind of have that kind of a larger kind of skill set themselves, and they are kind of investing a lot of money to that as well. And I think that us as consulting companies, we have a responsibility also to both kind of guide and help our customers to build that skill. That kind of a needed skill level in the companies, and we need to kind of all the time develop our own skills. Plus that, like we have something, it's called Solita Academy. So we take in people that are kind of interested in a data career, and they go through the same recruitment process and so on. But we kind of pick in people who have not been working with this before, but have a huge passion for that.
As a way to basically increase the pool to meet the 70,000
demand.
And this is one of my kind of key messages always is that, okay, we can always sit here and say like, oh, 70,000, horrible, but always kind of put the elephant into pieces and start doing something. Yes, do something about it. It's not that hard. And if everybody would do a little bit of something, so soon we would have like this problem fixed.
Yes.
Cool. And it would be fun to also speak about something unfortunately close to everyone's mind right now, which is Corona as well. And there is a lot of I would love to hear, for one, we want companies to transform to be more adapting to the data and AI business, but now they have to transform to handle the Corona situation as well. And for one, to transform to working remotely and still having a working environment. And I know at Solita you have a lot of passion for having a good working environment. How do you manage today the situation with working remotely and handling this situation?
For us, like the way of working, it was quite fast, and we didn't have any hustle in that because we already had all the kind of digital means to work remotely. What we have been doing and kind of on a concrete level is like we have had fantastic things coping in difficult times, kind of psychological sessions that
psychological sessions.
Yeah,
what does that mean?
like this kind of mental well-being sessions. We have in-house coaches at Solita as well for our employees to utilize whatever kind of problems in lives or development issues or whatever they want to talk about. So the doors are open for our employees to go and utilize our in-house coaches, and they also develop this kind of mental health or well-being kind of workshops during the Corona when it broke out. And we also established different kinds of channels where we kind of compare our home offices and share tips and tricks from different countries and share small videos and all kinds of stuff. But this kind of a mental well-being session, it was so awesome. I participated one, and I had there was 200-300 of my colleagues in different countries sitting in that session.
In a single session? Remotely?
In a single session through Teams. Really? And we did discuss openly about kind of the anxieties that we have in a kind of
chats. How do you speak 300 people at once? There
was the chats, and they have kind of moderated it in a really clever way. And we ended that session with this breathing exercise where you put one hand on the chest and one on the stomach. And then you listen and you start kind of breathing and getting the pulse down. And when you have 300 people with their mics open, it's
cool.
It's like the virtual choir, if you heard about it, like Eric Whittaker kind of.
Have you
thing.
seen the virtual choir?
No, I haven't. No,
that's one of the most coolest internet clip. How many?
There's many thousands of people singing in a choir, and it's like.
So basically, you can be part of a choir. Everybody sings their piece. Yeah. You sing your stemma, theme, or whatever. Yeah. And then basically you send your sample in on yourself singing with the video. Yeah. And then you put it all together and made a choir, real choir with more than 1,000 people, something like that. Yeah. And when he does it on the video clip, you can see the tiles of 1,000 people singing. And at the same time, the music is, I get goosebumps.
Oh, so beautiful.
But it's super cool. Yeah. So cool. What is it called? Is it the digital?
It's Eric Whittaker Virtual Choir.
Yeah,
if you Google for that, you will find it.
Yeah, so it's a TED Talk. Like he started like doing it in a small scale, and then it became this sort of let's see if this can be done. Yeah. And it was a massive project to sort of orchestrate all that. Yeah. But the outcome, wow, super cool, and even the production is quite cool.
I think this is important to a lot of people I think struggle in times like this, in sitting by yourself, and now Corona is picking up again, and you have to we actually just in Peltoren closed down the office completely like today, and because of we had a number of positive use cases, and it seems to be growing too fast, and we have to do what we can to stop the spreading, but at the same time that causes a lot of mental stress.
Yeah.
But I think these kind of mental well-being sessions sound really interesting.
Yeah, and it has been really kind of appreciated, and also kind of our kind of network and feeling of our core value is caring, and that means that we care about each other. We are never alone. You're never alone with your question. Somebody is always helping you.
Yeah.
If you throw it in the Slack or whatever, that's kind of a main communication channel for us, and the kind of feeling of belonging. So you know that you're in this network and you get all kinds of help and support, and you can openly like be yourself, because we don't identify anything between the kind of private me and the working me, but it's a whole person and it's a whole life as well. So I think that's really important, kind of to acknowledge that, and also as a company to take responsibility for the kind of the most important asset for us in our company.
But can we go here a little bit, because
Yes.
now we're talking about the community and from a Corona perspective and how we can help each other. But I sensed also this connects back to Solita coming almost like from a developer community feeling. What's the practical, hardcore way how you are maintaining and growing this community approach inside Solita? What's the real hardcore mechanisms you are doing that I think can be very valuable in Corona, but it's actually, I think, super valuable for any enterprise, how to cascade out new ways of working and all that. So could you, maybe from a Corona point of view, but I think it's something that is, I sense it's quite deeply ingrained in how you work, community. Yeah. What is that? How does it work for you?
Yeah, kind of a... as I said, so we're 1,200 people, and you absolutely do not know everybody. You just know a couple, and then you will always be kind of introduced to the next one and so on. And that's how it starts. But I think everything is kind of based on our kind of the values. And the values are nothing that a management team somewhere decided upon, but they have grown from that developer community. And these are kind of the leading principles how we are. And I hear a lot of times, like my colleagues saying that, I'm sorry, but that wasn't really kind of Solita way.
It's not the Solita.
Yeah, no, that's not.
So the values basically grow bottom up, so to speak, from the people.
Absolutely, yeah. So there is and that's how everything happens in our company as well, like the tech partner choices. It doesn't come from the management team or anything. Management team is there, but it's more kind of autonomous. Yeah, and we're trying to take off the obstacles. My work, for example, is to, if somebody sits stuck in some question, to find from the network the right person to talk to, take kind of sweep away. I'm the cleaning lady, sweeping away the obstacles and to be kind of a helping hand and to support and to inspire
But this is also essentially now a difference between Tayloristic leadership and what Tayloristic management is all about, towards more agile servant leadership.
Yeah, servant
at the core.
At the
core,
yeah. The servant is kind of a word.
So
that's
so what I'm hearing in between the lines, Solita has that sort of culture from the beginning. What is the purpose of management? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, because the kind of we have all of these huge minds and experts that we have recruited, and there is no single person who knows anything better than somebody else, but it's the combination of skills that matters, and that we all do this together. And kind of this old way of kind of, I have decided here, so it doesn't really kind of fly among skilled people. And
So I get the soft parts of this. Yeah. Are there any hard parts of how you enforce is the wrong word, how you foster this? Like Slack, right? You have Slack or something like that. Yeah. Is there some mechanisms here that are there to boost this, or is it just all organic?
Yeah, it's mainly organic, and it sounds very stupid that now, after kind of done 2 acquisitions in Sweden, so that we believe in organic growth, and that's what we actually do. In Solita's history, we have made 3 acquisitions, and it's more of a merger. It was also this kind of started from the value base. As our recruitment interviews as well, so it's more of a matter of matching. Than just the numbers or tech skills, but I think there is one very important part of the kind of mechanism is also that we gather feedback from our employees every week.
Every week.
Yeah,
I heard something about that. Yeah. How does that really work? Do you actually do it every week?
Yeah. we have just a couple of questions, because if you send out a kind of this yearly annual kind of survey, so you get kind of, and in that point of view, kind of points of time, somebody could be pissed off and say, just this sucks, I hate my job and
because
whatever.
Because it's in a sucky project or very stressed.
Exactly, and that was a bad day,
it's
slept
bad.
4 hours and so on. But we collect kind of feedback to different questions every week. So you get like 3 questions every week, and then you answer, and they are kind of tied to our value base and to different dimensions. And it's a tool that's called Beacon that we use, a fantastic tool, because then we can also engage into dialogue directly if we see that somebody, and it's anonymous. But we also are now testing a feedback tool that is not anonymous, so we can give feedback to each other. And this kind of giving feedback is really important. And when I started at Solita, so I come from the maybe a little bit more traditional kind of consultancy background, and away from the diesel times to to learn to work and navigate in the kind of
American company.
Yes, in boxes, so to speak. And when I started at Solita, so I was like, okay, and what should I do now? Can I just decide this thing? And we encourage everybody to rather make a decision and try, and then to see if it fails.
It's a Finnish way in some way.
Not at all. I wouldn't say that, because everybody is kind of allowed to fail. And we are also always, when we lose something or something goes wrong, so we have retro, and then we discuss, okay, but nobody gets punished about kind of, it's more punishable not to do anything.
That's I like that. It's worse to not to do anything than to actually try something.
Yeah, just go ahead and try, and if it goes wrong, so it goes wrong. That's the way we learn. But the most important thing is also the reflection afterwards. So you actually have the retro, and you sit with other people and reflect, not by yourself, and because you're not alone in this.
But it's clear. I don't think you even think about it, but you have some mechanisms which are totally ingrained in how you operate, that is actually fostering this. Like you have retros, you have these interview or questions every week, and you have a huge Slack community which is organic in itself.
Yeah.
So these are mechanisms that is part of a networked economy, I believe. It's part of the future way of. I mean, like a Tayloristic approach can never be as fast of deciding stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, like imagine having, should we try this out? Put it on the Slack, got a couple of comments, let's try it, do a retro.
Yeah.
You can't be faster, right? And this is so different to a Tayloristic type of approach.
Yeah, it is, and it's actually really interesting to see it actually happening with all of these people, this amount of people that it actually works. And what our kind of challenge is going further, so of course we need some kind of structure, we need to make a profit and loss statement and so on, and we need to report our
the taxes.
We need to also report time and send out invoices and stuff like that. But it's kind of but for example, we never discuss about the internal invoicing from a business unit to another or whatever. It's just totally irrelevant for our kind of daily operations, and it's just kind of encouraging of what it is. It's just kind of creating a mental kind of a secure place where everybody's kind of accepted. Then you dare to do the decisions and try and know that you're not going to be kind of executed.
Speaking to about daring to do decisions, and I really love what you phrased before, saying it's worth to not try to change than actually to try something and fail, right? And I think that speaks more than just to people, but actually to companies. Companies that do actually want to help from Solita's point of view. And I remember, I think it was the Minister of Education in Sweden that said something in March or the spring, that the corona situation has really transformed, for example, the educational system more in the last 3 months than in the last 5 years. Yeah. And, if we really try to do something, we can actually succeed surprisingly well. And thinking about this, we are seeing that corona is changing the society in so many ways. And we know that we want to avoid the kind of AI divide we're seeing to the tech giants and the dependencies we have to their cloud solutions and whatnot. And we want to see transformation there. But it's going really slowly, I think, at least in my view. I hope you agree. So we want to have a transformation, and I wish we could have a transformation as fast as Corona is doing in some way. Do you think that we can, in some way, find a positive spin of how Corona is transforming the society to also make people understand we can actually do a transformation and it's not that dangerous? Or what's your thinking there?
Yeah.
If I'm not sure if it was a clear question.
Yeah, but I understand. Yeah, and I think if we would do a retro after
after Corona,
as a whole world,
yes.
and think what has actually kind of what have we actually learned from this experience, and I think that's really important reflection also, because we have customers who only had like a kind of a demand that consultants must be on site, and that's really a hard kind of a demand to make when you have our kind of a delivery model is also to gather the best skill despite of where they are located at.
And especially in Corona times as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And
but this has helped us. And our delivery model is more
Yeah.
accepted now, and companies are actually getting the best skills.
Because this is, talking about skill shortage, and then expect you need to be on site.
Exactly.
It doesn't add up.
No.
But then of course that's to say you have people working remote is not the same as offshoring or outsourcing. And this is another conversation where I think this gig economy, network economy, or delivery model, because the first generation here, outsourcing, right? That is a different ball game, which is maybe fitting for what you call it, business as usual. Or
Run the business.
Run the business.
And change the business.
Run the business with a very clear instruction, with a very manual task, outsource it if it's not core business.
Yeah.
But change, you can't do that. But to have the best of the best working as part of a DevOps team, sitting in the same environment, but now remote, is still quite good, right?
Yeah.
Compared to having now not the right competence.
Yeah.
And, we want to be a DevOps team, but we're not going to have the right competence because we need to be in the,
on site. Yeah.
On site.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is, I think this is all for me, the new economy, right? And that is, I think this will change the consultant delivery models at the core.
Yeah.
And we will not talk about onshoring, offshoring, the big players who's playing that game. And I also think that has, even how Solita works and who is actually core Solita and who is a friend of Solita.
Exactly, we have that concept as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have extended our network to the friends of Solita as well.
Of course.
Yeah.
In order to really have the best of the best.
Yeah.
I find this is so. And then putting Corona in the mix here. Corona has taught us that we can work remote. Corona has taught us that when we have adversary in front of us and we simply need to fix something, we find a way.
Yeah.
And I think that's
but
really
but working remotely is one thing, and that's something that Corona certainly have changed and made us, be very skilled at, I think, at this day and time. But the other question is more like transforming not people but companies.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of companies had been forced now in recent months and in this year to change. So basically my question is, do you think, although Corona of course is a very negative impact in so many ways, both culturally, socially and economically and medically and whatnot, could there be a positive aspect in terms of, yes, we can change? Do you see what I mean?
Yes, absolutely, and I think also it has accelerated as you wished that the kind of the data, AI, and so on parts are going to get kind of accelerated, and that's what I have at least seen, and are kind of
So you mean accelerating, despite Corona, in some ways accelerating?
Yes, absolutely.
Not only projects stopping.
No. We our biggest mistake in Corona was to slow down recruitment. Because now we're paying the price here. It has gone really really well for us during this time, because what they have, our customers have said that even though some consultants have been assignments have been ended, but not ours, because we sit in the very core of the kind of a solution to a new economy.
Do they see the need to transform? Is
yes.
that
Yeah, and it has to go faster.
Yeah.
So you think you're coming into more and more conversation where the sense of urgency has picked up,
Yeah.
and Corona has actually pushed the urgency.
Yes. to become more data-driven, digital, to actually kind of add the kind of database services and on top of a product offering to automate processes and this and that.
And the resilience. I mean, like our process broke down. It had too many manual steps in it.
Yeah.
And now, okay, clearly that was a problem when we couldn't be physically on site. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that we knew we should fix that, and now let's do it.
Yeah. Now it's now we need to do it.
We need to do it.
Yeah, but it's a little bit like the schools and the education part that we can actually take those steps, and I hope that there is plenty of companies who are going to realize this if they didn't find it in the beginning of the corona yet, but I think this is going to
but changing companies now, because here we are talking about, okay, we're highlighting the urgency of projects. But the fundamental problem is also how we are steered and how we are making decisions and the Tayloristic leadership. And to give an example, a customer I work with a lot, they introduced the golden arrow as a concept where, okay, this is in the beginning of Corona, in the midst of Corona. Okay, we really need to get some information or some data. So this whole idea of scrambling around the golden arrow. So everybody, we drop it, we do this. And had tremendous pace and tremendous, fantastic results in extreme short times. But it's also quite, it puts a light onto me. Maybe this is a better steering. Maybe this Tayloristic steering or governance could never produce that. Are you seeing those changes, or how do you think about those changes? Because I think that is to truly change the company.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, and what we have seen is a lot of organizational change during Corona as well. So there is a lot of kind of changes in organizational structures, as because you need to rethink. You really need to think how are we going to kind of manage through this, which has us actually kind of taking steps toward being more data driven and so on. But of course, when you engage with large organizations and kind of multinationals and who have been working this and that way, so the journey is long. And I remember when we started with one huge client here in Sweden like a couple of years ago, and I was like, we nudge. slowly nudge, and you will see. And then we also always make these kind of reflections each quartile or half a year with the team, because you get frustrated when you're like, we want to work with agile. I say you are more agile than you were like a month ago. Yes. Just let's check back what has happened, and yes, but it's steps kind of forward.
It's like the Elon Musk talking about the Trump presidency and the dangers potentially of that, and he's basically said, well, presidency is basically having a small rudder on a huge ship, so he can steer all he wants on that small rudder, but it doesn't really change the direction of the ship. Yeah. So it's a hard thing to change the direction of a large. And
that's nice to hear that, because I just said also I want to quote the kind of Lindeblad, the Skogsmunk, the forest, what's his Björn, I think. No, you don't know.
No, I'm not.
No, you have to listen. I will send you a link to his summer talk on the radio many years ago, and now he did this summer again. But his kind of a motto that he also kind of engraved on his wedding ring was, "This too shall pass," which is quite nice kind of thinking, because this is, and I have always said after the kind of the election of Trump that yes, of course there is the last roar of the dinosaur, because the change is evident. It's you can't avoid it. It's such a force, and it comes. But of course, the ones who have kind of earned their money with the old structures and are afraid and want to maintain the old. Of course, there is going to be resistance, like in every change, and there is going to be some roar if it's like 2 or 1 or 3 mandate periods or whatever. But that too shall pass, because actually, as you say, the boat is so big, so you can't stop it, and you can't kind of there will be kind of we're in the midst of some kind of change management process where
I
there's
think
resistance.
this is an awesome final quote in some sense. This too will pass, and that doesn't only speak about Corona or the Trump presidency, but perhaps the AI divide and whatnot that we're seeing now will at some point pass, I hope, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Should we take one last theme?
Okay.
We always ask the singularity question. Why don't we do that here as well?
Yeah, sure.
So, I mean, like, it's always interesting to hear people. I mean, like, one of the key ideas with this podcast is basically to look at different perspectives of becoming data and AI driven. And one way also of doing that is asking a similar question from super techie guys to, leaders and stuff like that. And we actually had one question where we basically come up, how do you understand the, artificial general intelligence, and when will we reach singularity? What is your view on this?
Well. Yeah, I think it's a very theoretical.
Extremely. Philosophical.
Yeah, very philosophical.
A philosophical
approach,
ending.
Yeah. Yeah, how could I even? I don't have the answer. I might say, and I don't know if it's something that
nothing that you are preoccupied with.
Not in my daily life, at least, because I think it's a natural part of an evolution somehow, and it will get somewhere on some level. And I think it's a little bit the same that we're trying to always kind of figure out the future in our heads, and nobody knows. So I leave it to the faith.
You leave that question to the faith. I think that's
it's a nice. Yeah.
I don't. It's pretty good. I like it. And one last question.
Yeah.
Who should we invite to this podcast that you would like to recommend?
Oh wow. You know what? I have to say, I have an awesome colleague. And I think he's been working in Sweden for a couple of years now, and he's the kind of the visionary of the future of how data and all of the different parts of kind of from the tech are kind of joining and melting together into this fantastic story.
The data mesh.
The data mesh kind of a guy. So yeah.
So you have a data mesh guy for us.
Yeah, I would actually. I think you would love to talk with him because he has a huge vision and really, and he describes it so that at least you think that you understand.
Well, that's one of the challenges, how we can make the future more understandable and clear, and as we can have a direction to go for. So maybe. Yeah.
So Mr. Antti Loukiala is my tip for you, because at this point I have not heard such visionary thoughts from many people.
And visionary in terms of how companies should work, or visionary in terms of society in general, or what?
No,
data,
but kind of the data tech point of view, and how all of these kind of tech solutions actually melt together into this kind of
So where's the tech and data? Where's the society, the foundation around? How will that work together?
Yeah.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Super cool.
Awesome. It's been a true pleasure, as usual, to have you here. And it's been, I wish we had more time to speak more about more topics. Goran, did you want to say something? Or? Yeah. So what's next in your life, Petronella? What's happening in Solita and for you personally?
Yeah, now we are kind of preparing for next year a little bit, and having our sights on 2021 already like a month ago. So we have in our minds kind of already a little bit kind of close this year, which has been awesome, and it's big kind of a growth year in all kinds of aspects for everybody from personal points of view and everything. So it's been an awesome kind of a ride and in a very special moment. And the top for me is to kind of take on new challenges again, as I always do. Every day is a new day, and also I'm waiting really much to get my daughter back home on Monday, and but just kind of continuing with the fantastic journey and learning every day how to kind of be an even better kind of modern leader and dividing kind of the responsibility and the organization in a good way, and coaching people going further.
So something exciting is happening and moving forward. Always.
Every day is different. So that's the most kind of the best way for me to spend my life.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. It's been a true pleasure being here, guys. This was so nice.
Was it fun?
Yeah, a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.